Hello everyone, this is this week's history lesson. Today we're going to be starting a new topic. We're going to be looking at a famous historical event. Our learning objective for today is to sequence events chronologically. All that means is to put them in time order, so when they really happened. Okay, so I've got a PowerPoint to share with you and I want you to have a think. I'm going to have some clues on the screen and I want you to think which historical event I might be talking about. So here we are, look. Have a look at the pictures. Do we think it's something that's happened in recent times or something that happened a long time ago? And why do you think that? If you've got a grown-up with you today or a brother or sister or anybody else, perhaps you could have a little chat with them about the pictures. What else is going on in these pictures? What can you see? There's definitely some kind of terrible disaster happening, isn't there? What do you think? Have a look at this picture at the top. I like this one. This is what we call a contemporary image. It's a picture that was done very near the time that this event actually happened, as opposed to something that was done a long time after. What do you think these are in the background? What's going on with this boat in the river? Where do you think these pictures are set? Can you think of somewhere with lots of buildings and a river running through the middle of it and a very famous bridge? Here are some more clues. This famous historical event started on Pudding Lane. Has anybody heard of that before? And here is a monument. This is a photo of something that is really in this place today, and it commemorates or remembers this famous historical event. There are even songs about this famous historical event. Shall I tell you what we're going to be learning about today? We're going to start learning about the Great Fire of London. It's possibly one of my favourite topics. Now, to do this, I would like you to pretend that we are going back in time. So you're going to get yourself a time machine and you can do this however you like. It's best if you join in. You can do a little bit of acting with this. You can make some crazy sound effects. You can move around. You can stand up or sit down, whatever you like, but you're going to get into your time machines. Are you ready? Here we go. So into your time machine, we're going back in time. What can you see through the windows? It's going past so fast. We're going a long, long way back, nearly 355 years into the past. All right. Here we go. We're nearly there. And stop. Well done. So we've gone nearly 355 years into the past to London. So the place isn't that far away. I'm sure lots of you have been down to London, but we've gone a long time back in history. So here we are. The year is 1666 and we have arrived in London. It looks very different to the London of today. You have a look at the buildings. I'm sure there must be some buildings like this somewhere in London still, but all of the houses and shops in London were built like this, out of wood and timber and plaster. Look how close they are all together. Look at the street. It's not a great big wide open paved street. It's a muddy track. And in this picture, look, you can see sailing boats going down the River Thames. Look at the clothes that people are wearing. It's very different. In fact, I can show you what London looks like today. There it is. Paved roads, huge, great big tall buildings. There's the Shard and the Gherkin over there. None of those were there. Not in 1666, but some of the bridges were over the river. It is now Sunday, the 2nd of September. London has had a long, hot, dry summer with hardly any rain and lots of wind. The strong winds are important in our historical event. All of London is dried out and feeling the heat. Before the sun has even had a chance to rise, disaster strikes. So we're on day one, Sunday the 2nd of September, very, very early in the morning before most people are awake. In a baker's shop in Pudding Lane, someone hasn't cleaned the oven out properly. A fire starts. There it is. So it starts quite small, but do you remember what I said the buildings were made out of? That's right, they were made out of wood. So these wooden structures all crammed in close together, really hot and dry with no rain for ages and ages, and suddenly one catches fire. What do you think is going to happen? Because the houses were made of wood and they were so close together, the fire spreads quickly. By Sunday afternoon, people are starting to panic and they're leaving their homes and running. Yeah, look at it spreading through the buildings. There isn't a fire service in 1666. So there's no fire brigade to call. No one's going to come and help. What you did have were groups of people who would work together, just people living on the street or in the town, who would work together to try and put the fire out using leather buckets, which would be really heavy, especially when they're full of water. And they didn't have taps in their houses like we have now. Where do you think they'd have got the water from? You think, what goes through the centre of London? Yeah, they'd have had to have gone all the way down to the River Thames or to the nearest well, dragged the water out in the leather buckets and carried it along a big chain of people up to the house that was on fire. They also had something called fire squirts, which looked like a great big metal hose that they would squirt water onto the fire with. They wouldn't be very quick or very powerful, though, like a fireman's hose that we have now. Here's a fire squirt. So they'd suck the water up out of the river or out of the buckets and then push the plunger at the end to squirt the water out onto the building. And then they'd have to do it again. And they were so heavy, several people would have to help hold them. And there are the leather buckets. Unfortunately, this fire is so big and so strong and it's spreading so quickly that these strategies don't work. By Sunday evening, the Mayor of London gives the order to pull down any houses that are burning in order to try and stop the fire in its tracks. Here he is. They use these things called fire hooks. They would have been very dangerous as well. They're big, long poles of wood or metal with a hook on the end, and they would hook onto the windows of the houses or the eaves of the houses on the roof and pull, and the whole thing would come tumbling down, fire and all. This doesn't work either. So far, all the ways they have of fighting fire have not touched the Great Fire of London. It's still spreading. Day 2, Monday the 3rd of September. Keep a little eye on the pictures in this PowerPoint because some of them will be in the activity you're going to do afterwards. So if you paid close attention and looked, you should be able to recognise which day they've happened on. So we're on Monday the 3rd of September. A strong easterly wind makes the fire worse because if you think about it, it's blowing the flames all over the place and it's spreading really badly. Lots of people tried to get away from the fire by getting in boats and rowing across the River Thames. And they're having to take everything they own with them to stop it getting got by the fire. Day 3. Tuesday the 4th of September. So 3 days this fire has lasted now. These days it's very unusual for a fire to last more than a couple of hours or a day at most. A really big fire, the only ones I can think of that have happened recently have been the big bushfires that happened last year. They tend to last for a long time. But fires in a city where you've got a fire brigade don't tend to last this long. So on Tuesday the 4th of September, the fire was at its worst. It spread across the river and has even burnt down St. Paul's Cathedral. Here it is in the picture. If anybody's been down to London and seen St. Paul's Cathedral, you'll probably think that doesn't look anything like it. And that's because it got completely destroyed, burnt down to the ground in the Great Fire of London and had to be built again afterwards. So the building that you can see now down in London is the building that replaced this one. And later in the topic, we'll learn about who designed that. Day 4, Wednesday the 5th of September. So it's still going. In desperation, King Charles II, so he was the king at the time, ordered that any burning houses had to be blown up using gunpowder. That sounds a bit crazy in the middle of a fire, doesn't it? But what would happen was that the houses that were on fire would get blown up, knocked down, and then there'd be a big gap between the houses that weren't on fire, and hopefully the flames wouldn't be able to spread across the big gap. They're called a fire break, and they're still used today. So the houses were blown up, and the fire had nothing left to burn. There we are. There's the big explosion. Look, so that's the gunpowder blowing up. And then here, look, this poor chap's house is a bit close, isn't it? But hopefully his won't catch on fire now because there's been this big gap, this big break caused by the explosion. The other thing that happened was that the wind died down. So it wasn't being blown across the city like it was before. That helped too. Finally, on Thursday, the 6th of September, so on the 5th day, 5 days this fire lasted, the fire finally went out. Now they all look celebrating, congratulating each other for being able to put the fire out at last. But look at all the destruction in the background. Unfortunately, lots of people were left without a home, and many people had to camp in the countryside outside London for a long time afterwards until the city was rebuilt, or they'd have to go and find homes somewhere else. Just to show you, this is the area affected by the fire. So this is an old map of London from around the right time. And you can see here the little flame. This is where it started on Pudding Lane in that bakery. Sunday, it already spread this far. Monday, all the way around here. And then Wednesday, look how far it's gone. All of this area of London destroyed by the fire. To put that into context for today, here's a modern picture of the centre of London. London's a very big place now, so it doesn't look so much now. Here's the Gherkin again, like from the original picture, and the Shard that we saw on that first picture of London. Here are the bridges over London, over the River Thames. And again, here's that Sunday picture. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday it stopped. But even so, that's a big area. Look at all the buildings underneath. So it's time now to travel back to our own time. When we get back to our own time, I'll show you what our worksheets are going to be. So get ready to use your time machine one last time, and we're going to whiz back through the past into the present where we can get on with some work. Are you ready then? So I think we'll get our time machine up and ready to go again. Ready. And here we go. So the time machine's working. So you're travelling back through the past, away from the Great Fire of London, towards the present. We're nearly there, ready to get on with some work. And done. Well done. Right. So I'll stop sharing that one with you, and we'll talk about what we're going to do. So do you remember our learning objective at the start of the lesson? It was to sequence historical events chronologically, wasn't it? So we're going to think about the things that happened during the Great Fire of London, and we're going to put those events in order and create a timeline. In the OneDrive folder, there are 2 sheets that you can choose between. They'll both need cutting up, so it doesn't matter, we're going to make a timeline. If you choose the trickier sheet, it's got more events. So on Sunday, you might have noticed we talked about Sunday for quite a long time, didn't we, in the PowerPoint, because there was a lot going on. So on that sheet, you've got 3 events for Sunday that you've got to put down. Every other day has just got 1 event. If you choose the slightly easier sheet, there is only 1 event per day. That's basically the difference. I'll show you the sheets now. You'll need to cut out the date cards, the pictures, and the arrows. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And you're going to lay it out on the table in front of you in the right order so that it makes a timeline, starting on the Sunday, going through to the Thursday. What happened when? When you've done that, if you've got a grown-up with you or a brother or sister, somebody who can help you, I want you to try and tell them about the Great Fire of London. So just 1 little sentence for each picture. What happened? Can you remember some of those words? What equipment did they use? It was a what kind of bucket? A metal one? A leather bucket. What were the hooks they used to pull the houses down with? Try and use some of that language. If you need to go through the PowerPoint again, that's absolutely fine. You can listen to it again, that's fine. Right, so I'm going to show you your sheets. So here they are. So this is the slightly trickier one. There are more pictures for you to have a look at. I've given you some little clues underneath So the name of the building in the picture, or a quick short sentence talking about what's happening, just because I think the pictures could be a bit confusing on their own. You've got the date cards at the top. So you cut them out, put them in order along your table, separated by the arrow cards here. Okay, and then underneath each date, I want you to put the pictures down in a row like that. Okay, so anything that happened on Sunday, if you can manage that in order as well, then that's brilliant, because remember, what's the very first thing that must happen? They're not going to start pulling buildings down without the fire starting, are they? So maybe the picture of the fire starting first, then what they did about it. Then the next day, picture underneath, next day, picture underneath, next day, picture underneath. When you've done that, you can talk through and see how many facts you can remember that we've learned so far. Or if you've got any other amazing facts about the Great Fire of London that you already know, pop those in there as well. Really wow your audience's socks off. If that's a little bit much, if that's a bit tricky, there is this other one. It's on 2 pages, this one, so don't forget to print them both out and cut the right things out. Again, put the date cards in order, separated by the arrows, and this time there's just one picture for each day, and there's a sentence underneath that gets you started. Okay, so it tells you what's happening. So you can talk through it, you can add some extra facts and make it sound really amazing. And that's really today's lesson. The only other thing I will say is in the OneDrive, I've put a link to a really, really cool game. It's all about the Great Fire of London. If you follow the link, then you can work through the Great Fire of London as if you were really there. You're going to be following a little boy and his story, but you'll meet lots of other characters and famous people that were involved in the Great Fire of London. It is good fun, that one. So if you want to do that today as well, or if you want to do that another day, or if you want to do that first, whichever, it doesn't matter, but it's there for you to have a go at, and it's a really nice one. So give it a go. And that is the end of our introduction. So I hope you have fun learning about the Great Fire of London, and I look forward to seeing your timelines. See you later.